Hi, students. So I just wanted to share some information with you. As we're looking on the screen right now, this is what I call an MBLEx study process. And the reason for this process and the outline nature of it is a lot of students have come to me after they have been unsuccessful their first attempt in the MBLEx process, and they really don't have a plan as to how they want to attack the MBLEx the next time around. Especially, this is going to be helpful for students who might not have even taken the MBLEx, but definitely it's designed for students who might not have been successful. So, as we can see here, this is a stair-step sort of approach to being able to create a study plan with action items. And one of the building blocks of a good plan is that you have an action item, the outcome that you want from that action item, and how long is that action item supposed to take. Okay, so when you have all three of those things, you've got a really measurable plan that can dictate what you should expect at the end of it. So as you can see here, where we're going to start is right where your MBLEx score report is going to give you. There's a lot of gems in there. And so what you want to do is you want to take time to digest that score report, identify what are all of your low categories, okay? And then also take note of what are your borderline categories are. Because the idea is that if we can help strengthen those two things, the low first and then the borderline, your passing is all but ensured. Okay. So the next step after that is going to be your diagnostics. And what that looks like is you taking the MBLEx content outline, okay, that you get from the fsmtb.org, go under examination, and it'll be right there in the score report outline. So what that's going to do is give you subcategories of all eight major categories the test tests you on. So you're wanting to write down all of the subcategories, all the categories that are responsible and fall under your lowest subject that you performed in. And then do the same thing for your borderline as well. Because again, we're trying to break down and analyze all of the micro subjects that fall underneath a category, one like anatomy and physiology, or one that's like kinesiology or client assessment and integration. We want to know everything that we need to know that we're going to be tested on for those low subjects, okay? The next is we want to identify the approaches. And what I mean by that are, as you can see here, there are 4 different approaches that we should take relative to each of those particular categories. So we've got a visual approach, we have a tutor approach, we have a teaching approach, and a testing approach. And the thought process behind that is students learn differently. And as adults, we have different ways that we learn information. Okay. And so part of understanding why we scored where we did on the low subjects is based on our learning style. If we're visual learners, we need to put more emphasis on visual cues, visual options to be able to help us understand information. In addition to that, there's a tutoring option where if you're going to tutoring sessions, MBLEx boot camps, tutoring with your instructor, myself, or others, that's a big part as well. And then the other portion, teaching, right? If you want to learn something, one of the best ways to make sure you understand it the most and that you retain it and recall it is if you can teach it back to someone. So there's going to be that element for the approach, and also the testing approach, right? Whether you're taking full length practice exams, if you're taking smaller quizzes, 25, 50 question quizzes to kind of reinforce information, all 4 approaches are what we're going to be focused on after we're done with the diagnostics. And then of course, the user story map. And that's going to be a visual aid that I'll show you in just a minute that's going to help you identify certain things that you can do along your journey. Because just like any story, you have a beginning, you have a middle, and you have an end. But a lot of students don't really understand that when they start the journey, that they don't have a way of being able to frame the effort that they have and that they put into studying. And so they don't know what to expect. They hope they get a good result in terms of passing, but they don't have a measurable outcome. So that's what the story map is going to show us. And so let me show that to you now. So the story map, as you can see here, is what you're going to be filling out. And so let me just walk you through this. So on the left side here are all of your taskers, right? These are tasks that you're going to be doing for the different subjects that we're going to be identifying and focusing on. The first is going to be your diagnostics. Same thing we started out with in terms of our study process here, okay? And at the top here are all of our approaches that we discussed. So again, the visual approach, tutoring, teaching, and testing. We also have an alternative approach just in case you come up with something that's not listed here that really works for you and that you can see, okay, well, this is a benefit to me. This is helpful to me. Or if you don't have anything and you have notes that you want to put off to the side, there's a space for that too. So what you're going to do in this particular area is first, instead of task for your lowest category, you want to write out task for what is that low category? Was it kinesiology? Was it pathology? You're going to write those categories in the respective spaces, right? So if you only had 2 low categories, you're going to take advantage of this one as well as this one. And then if you've got borderlines, you can put those here and here. Now, if you've got 3 low categories, then sure, we've got space for that. So just outline this left column here, what you need to name, okay? Then up here is what you're going to do. I've already started you out in terms of the visual approach for diagnostics, what we discussed earlier. Identify all of your low categories from your score report, and then make sure you capture that because you'll be able to fill that information out on the side, on the left. The second, of course, is going to be looking at the course outline, the MBLEx outline, and then identifying all the subcategories for your relative low and borderline subjects. Okay, that's very, very important. And then one of the great things about this is if you have other things that you've done or that you want to do in terms of a visual approach, you'll take a sticky note and you'll drag it over here. And this will make room for whatever you end up creating, right? So I've started you out with 2, and you can put another one here. Now, you'll notice that there's a lot of different colors of sticky notes. So if you're the type of person that it would help you organize what you do a little bit better and you want to color code things, have at it. If you want everything to be the same, you can do that too, right? There may be a way for you to be able to determine if a color code is relative to time, like I do these in the morning, I do the blues at night or in the evening or before work, after work, or these are things that I do at home, these are things I do at school, however you want to use it. This is your story map, okay? Just wanted to let you know that you can identify and write things down relative to your approaches, okay? And we'll discuss a little bit more in another video how we capture this by time. Okay, so this is the input. These are the action, or these are the things that we're going to be doing and that we focus on when it comes to the approaches. Our next video will talk about some more action items and put time associated with those. So what this next step, after you've started to develop your story, you may see how things start to meander and move around. You may not have the same approach sequence for each of your taskers in each of your low or borderline categories. And if that's the case, no worries, that should be expected. Okay. If you do have the same approach sequence for each of your categories, okay, no worries. Why? Why do I say that? Because our next step that we're going to be discussing is how to measure the results that we're getting as a result of each of these approaches. Because again, we're not just doing something for the sake of doing something. We're putting in inputs. We're putting in a visual, a tutoring, a teaching, and a testing approach to our efforts. And we're expecting an outcome, a result. And so we want to make sure that we're trending upward in terms of our scores, in terms of the time that we're spending on things, in terms of our comprehension and our recall, in terms of how comfortable we are with the material. Remember, we discussed that the MBLEx is testing us at a critical thinking level of about a 3 or level 4. Level 3 is that you can sort of understand a concept and explain it in your own words. And then that 4th level is an association level, meaning you can take this concept and embed it into another concept to elaborate and expound on something that's larger, right? So you have a higher echelon of understanding about something because you can take one concept and use it to explain several other concepts. That's that's where your understanding should be when it comes to the MBLEx, and that's probably where your understanding is on the categories that you scored good in, but not so much the borderline and certainly not the low. So we want to make sure we're bringing our understanding up for the low categories and for the borderline. So this section here is where you're going to be capturing the results and modifying your approach to determine what's the right sequence for me to understand this information. Because like I said, one low category, you may have one sequence of approaches, and the second or third might require something different, okay? So this is the step where we're kind of tweaking and narrowing down what's the exact sequence of events and approaches that I need in order to make sure my understanding of the material is where it needs to be. So that leads us into the action plan. Let me show you what the action plan looks like. So what we see here, like we said, the action plan is all about what action items I can take and the time frame and the result from those actions. I mentioned in class, if you remember, that students who are successful in passing the MBLEx, the baseline of their amount of time that they spend studying per week is about 20 hours. So that's just a generic sort of floor, not the ceiling necessarily, but the floor, kind of where you need to start as a benchmark. And so what we have here is a way that you can capture in a week's time a snapshot, right? So if you only know based on your schedule and your lifestyle that you have 4 days that you can dedicate to studying, then what that looks like is you're going to spend 5 hours, maybe a little more, on each of those days. Now, I didn't put days of the week here because, again, it might not correlate one day right after the next. You may have to skip some days. Either way, we've got a way to capture time, and we also have a way of capturing actions. So these actions along the top here are just some different things that students have done in the past that have been successful in passing the MBLEx, things you might already be doing, and some things you might not have thought to do. Well, we'll walk through it, right? So this first action item is an MBLEx diagnostic. What that means is you're going to take a full-length exam, right? Whether it be on the MBLEx Test Prep app, I recommend that one, or your Pocket Prep mock exam. I believe there are 3 mock exam MBLEx Prep tests on that. What this is wanting to do is give you a fresh understanding about where your scores are, okay? And if you're comfortable, you might even do a diagnostic on the specific categories that you scored low in. So you've already just taken the MBLEx. You don't necessarily need to take another full-length 8 category question exam. You've already got that, right? The score report is that diagnostic. Now it's time to take this diagnostic and pair it with one subject. So if kinesiology, pathology, and anatomy and physiology were your 3 lowest categories, you want to try to take at least 2 diagnostics in one of those subjects, one of the 3, right? 1 or 2. And what you're going to do is then you'll write down which subject you took the diagnostic in here, and maybe if you did 2, okay? Or if you had time to do 3, then you can move that to here, like we said, and it'll give you these sticky notes. Again, the point of this action plan is to determine what you did and how long it took you. And also, some of these action items will yield results. So for instance, if you took, after you've done the diagnostic, and let's say you did practice exam, 100-question practice exam, right? Then you could write down here, take the sticky note, write down your score. Okay, and write down what percentage of that low category, if you did a full 8 category exam, right, and you focused on all maybe 3 of your lowest subjects, or you did a full 8 category practice exam, write down your score, and also write down the percentage in terms of how many of the categories that you tested that were low, and just put some measurements to this, because again, this is all about putting in measurable results or measurable inputs to determine measurable outputs, okay? We want to be seeing a trend line of you getting better at certain things. And of course, the practice exam review, what that would look like would be something if you took an hour or an hour and a half or 30 minutes or 45 minutes to do some review on the exam. And maybe that might look like going to the sections that you scored the lowest in, corresponding those maybe to the outline to see, hey, does this question correspond to this category and then this subcategory? And then that will help you determine of a main category that you scored low in on the first MBLEx, where exactly in that category do you need to strengthen your skill set or increase your understanding or your critical thinking about something, okay? Now, these next ones are pretty creative. And again, this is the teaching element to things, right? So, whether you know a material or subject matter or not, one of the best ways to reinforce the recall is to teach it to someone. And that doesn't necessarily have to look like, in this environment where I'm standing in front of you and you're sitting and you're listening. It could be a conversation you're having with someone, maybe on the phone, or if you go out and you do something with someone else, or however you want to do it, right? A teach back is you understanding a concept. You've learned a concept, you've reviewed a concept, and now you're telling it to someone else. And one of your best yields would be someone who doesn't know, right? Someone who's not in the massage therapy world or trying to be in that world, someone that has no clue. Because this way, if you can explain it to someone who doesn't have any understanding whatsoever and they get it, then you know that you have it at the level that you can critically think about it, right? Because again, if you know something really, really well, you should be able to really simplify it. Right? So that's what a teach back is. And of course, you already know how to create video content. And that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be broadcasted for the world or put on your YouTube channel, but that could mean doing something like I'm doing now, creating a video about a subject matter, something that you've learned, maybe a way to remember something, maybe a mnemonic, maybe you had a great analogy about something. You found a way to be able to pair it to something that's very relatable, something that was very, very niche in terms of the massage therapy world or the MBLEx. And now you can put it into a modern day example for not only yourself, but maybe other students to relate to. And so if you've got a nugget like that, yeah, capture that on video. And then if you send that to someone, that could be two birds with one stone, right? You did a video content and you sent it off as a teachable moment for someone. So either way, great way to be able to really reinforce some of those concepts, okay? So if you did that video, you could say, hey, I did a video maybe on, take this and drag it over, and you could say, hey, I did a video on maybe a kinesiology concept or maybe a pathology concept. And it took me a couple of hours, or maybe it took me an hour, right? So either way, all of these things are going to be able to track how much time you're invested and how can you account for that time. Because again, just to say, hey, you spend 5 hours or 4 hours or 3 hours in a day over the course of a week, where did that time go to? This will help you create a plan of attack, right? Help you create smart goals and put time with that. All right. I hope this was helpful. And again, happy trails to your plan and make sure we do great things. All right. Have a good one.